Now I'm going to start this video as Gregory Allen McCowan from Houston, Texas. My state ID is 283-2893. Now I want to read the Riot Act. I am not inciting violence in any manner, form, or otherwise desired, other than my enemy are already incited to violence, regardless, because I called myself the Lord God Almighty. And in that regard, they're violating the laws of the United States, and I have to call them communists. They're going to call me the fascist. But understanding that concept, I got this low-key recording capability, so it's not the finest quality. I don't have the greatest equipment to initiate my presentation before the American people, and I'm sorry for that. But it's only because by the time I created a gold machine, they're still not going to give me my trillions of dollars of wealth that I'm the throne of God as the wealthiest man on earth. And in that regard, they all wanted to have me killed. In the story, survival, of course, is yet to be spoken. Now, I had an introduction by Orson Welles, 1980, The Man Who Saw Tomorrow. Now, if you look at my face and you compare it to Orson Welles, we almost look comprehensively, significantly the same from 1980 to 2025. And this is September 18th, 2025. Now, let me go to my a favorite impression of Orson Welles. Let me go to my favorite reason why I made it so low key, and it's still not low enough on the recording capability to keep the successive frames operating sequentially. Unfortunately, they don't want this video to be widely distributed, but I'm going to give a series of warnings to initiate this broadcast to let them know that any interference is going to create their own destruction. First of all, Google which has some manipulation and control over YouTube, should understand that when Orson Welles made his broadcast of the future of Nostradamus, that the man who saw tomorrow would be Nostradamus himself living again. And that is a title that I had to survive attempted murder 695 times. That my enemy vote by guns to commit murder, and if they want to vote by murder, The American people are to be alerted that the next election is to be by guns and not votes. And I'm not ashamed to say that all the voters that say they have no oath of God, which the Constitution requires, that they all want to kill God, they're not going to survive a civil war. Neither them, their spouses, their parents, their children, their siblings, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, they're all going to die. Only because they have no oath of God, that they won't want to recognize God, that they have to serve. And not to serve me, it's just to obey the law. I don't give a damn. I got a gold machine. I got all the wealth in the world. You don't have to serve me as slaves. I'm giving you your wealth. Here's my impression for Orson Welles. Anyways, so my warning is for Google. If you don't want your children kidnapped and killed by a communist invasion, don't deny these messages being delivered over the internet, because the people need to organize and mobilize for their defense. Second, if YouTube don't want their children kidnapped, they got to allow these messages to be delivered so their children are kidnapped. Here's an extortion of Donald Trump kidnapping Stephen Colbert to be fired, kidnapping Kimmel off the airwaves, and he's targeting NBC and their late night broadcasters to be removed. Well, they tried to shoot me dead April 3rd, 2023 in Houston, Texas, and everybody heard it. They tried to shoot me dead in Houston, Texas, April 7th and 8th, 2024, and everybody heard it. They tried to shoot me dead April 26th, 2025 in Houston, Texas, and everybody heard it. They know who I am, they know where I am, and they're not going to say anything about it. And I'm reading the Nation and Riot Act. You do not respond until you see me tell you what you need to do. Because I don't want you to kill the people that I want to save when I still have a chance to give them the offering to be saved. And definitely I don't want you to be burning down your cities when that's your economic activity to support your community. Now we have a national kidnapping going on. And it's not difficult to know that the communists kidnapping nation after nation around the world, that the communists would evolve in the United States to kidnap the American people. I'm not a fascist kidnapping the American people. In fact, I've been defending you. I've created a gold machine to create your wealth, the city of gold. In World War II, they made 30 million tons of lead. It turned into gold. That's 30 million tons of lead into gold. After World War II, England stole 22 million tons of gold out of the United States because at that time they couldn't turn 30 million tons of lead into gold. But now you can. But we're not going to surrender 300 million tons of lead into gold to England kidnapping the United States. And that wealth is yours. For your distribution of equality to be able to live in a land of paradise, but the labor has to build the paradise and you'll get paid for that. But otherwise, I'm not your slave master. I'm your economic system to finance your freedom. And when a government of Donald Trump says he's going to end your vote, the only vote you have is to shoot dead the government of those who say that they can take your vote away from you. And if they can take your vote away from you, that's a government you're not going to vote for. You're going to vote to shoot them dead until you can vote for a government that you can accept. So Donald Trump cut off the China trade, so China can't deliver any merchandise to the Americans. And the most important aspect of that trade was that China creating ammunition and delivering it to the United States. And when China isn't sending trade to the United States, they're not sending ammunition. So conserve your ammunition. The boys in the hood, stop killing yourself. You need each other to defend your own life. With the ammunition you're saving, not to kill each other, but to kill a certain government that wants to kidnap all of your brothers. I gotta light it again. Excuse me. You can understand that I'm trying to tell the American people that the gun ranges are going to run out of ammunition, and all you have to do is call your local gunsmith and say, we ain't got no more ammunition, and you know the government has cut off your ammunition supply because they're going to commit a civil war against you. And if you want to save your children from being kidnapped, well, the federal government has been kidnapping your children since 1970, and they haven't been declaring war against their kidnapping your children. And now here's Donald Trump. He kidnaps your children and takes 30% of your wealth out of your children's pocket. Kidnapping your children. You're paying Donald Trump to kidnap your children. This is the government of the kidnappers, and Donald Trump trying to cover himself from Jeffrey Epstein files. He himself is guilty only by the implicity that he's still kidnapping your children, taking their wealth. Now, as I say, in the Declaration of Independence, it is written, the people will suffer indignities, while indignities are sufferable. But when it comes to the point in time that they cannot allow the indignity of being kidnapped themselves by their own government, which they did not elect to be kidnapped by, but they voluntarily submitted their desire to claim jurisdiction that you're their possession. Well, as George Patton would know, when you see your own relations splattered in blood all over you, you'll know just what to do, because kidnapping is warfare on the battlefield, and bullets kidnap and kill. John Kennedy was kidnapped in November 22nd, 1963. Those bullets were not by Lee Harvey Oswald. They were a government that kidnapped the president and killed him with their bullets. That was the same government that had resurrected itself, invaded America, claimed jurisdiction, that they could operate as a federal communist state of guns in Washington, D.C. And there was no ratification for their state. They just assumed it as the government of England. And when John Kennedy wanted to stop their Federal Reserve Bank of kidnappers, hell, the Federal Reserve Bank didn't have to deliver a ransom note kidnapping children for 54 years. They were paying themselves for kidnapping your children. Now Donald Trump is kidnapping all the comics and satire on the late night shows. Can he kidnap YouTube? Can he kidnap the Lord God Almighty? He did it once before. I got kidnapped and killed 5 times in jail cells around the United States and resurrected. To the shame of those law enforcement agencies that serve a government of Satan, because Satan's government certainly is not going to have an oath of God. That anybody claiming to be God would be kidnapped and killed. And before David Koresh was killed, on July 11th, 1988, I declared myself the Son of God. And on July 15th, they tried to kill me. That Marine officer had to walk away from 4 feet away from me because he couldn't shoot me dead in his full dress uniform. Unless he shot himself dead in his full dress uniform. But that wasn't good enough for the rest of the military. When I traveled the United States in 1988, I was a shooting gallery. Clint Eastwood and Sandra Lockett threw the gauntlet. At least I only had a cat with me. And they couldn't kill the cat or me. And I came back to Michigan and survived that gauntlet all the way to Arizona, where I left a slight gift to the eagle's nest of a mirror to prove my presence. I've made a couple of editions of the same interior design, covered by exterior designs that were different, but I made the same design again when I returned to Michigan. The fact being that before David Koresh was killed in 1993 calling himself Jesus Christ, they were trying to kill me. And I've survived since David Koresh of April 19th, 1993 to this broadcast to you, September 18th, 2025, of which there's still a government that doesn't have an oath of God because they're all goddamn communist. And they can't prove otherwise. Because they got a communist president and they're not going to kill the bastard. They want that communist president to kidnap the United States. And your children are all kidnapped. You are all kidnapped. Your federal prison from the Pacific to the Atlantic, the Azores of the seas to the Gulf of America, you're in the great federal prison. And I'm reading you the Riot Act. I don't want any violence until I order it. Because I've ordered them from the time that Jesus Christ elected me president, October 18th, 25. Yeah, October 18th, 4:35 outside the Magnolia post office box in St. Petersburg, Florida, 2005. Jesus said, I want him to be elected the next president. Well, I guess that was going to certify my survival until a government refuses their oath of God, and then you can kill them all. And I'll give you poor people the right to be bulletproof, and the poor shall inherit the earth as Jesus Christ has said, and you won't be ashamed of killing their children who are being raised to be a government of Satan in America. So again, more on Google, YouTube, AT&T, the other internet communications of Microsoft. You do not want to interfere with these broadcasts. The American people have a right to defend their children from being kidnapped by a president who is an outright communist. I'm not going to call him a fascist. Soviet Jews, Soviet is a word for council. Council of Jews is that Donald Trump was elected by, not elected, selected by a council of Jews to kidnap the United States. The Soviet 1868 Jews created their council of 13 federal regional banks as a council of Jewish banking committing slavery of the United States. monetarily, that performance is why you're paying your national debt of borrowing money from the Jewish rabbis of Jerusalem, which Jesus said, I'll set you free from the money changers. And that's me. Jesus Christ sent Christ Peter. And defending Christ Peter, the gates of hell shall not prevail against you. And there's the gates of hell in the White House. And I'm going to level that building. I'm going to destroy it. I'm going to annihilate that building. Donald Trump has already desecrated it as the gates of hell. Charles Kirk got killed, and Donald Trump is standing there and saying, I'm great, creating a great ballroom in the White House. How about that? A great ballroom in the White House. I'm going to level the building. Excuse me here while I reattach the flame to my cigar. You know, going back to the Orson Welles tribute that the man who saw tomorrow. But my story is, and I can't explain all the details here. I've written 10 books. And each book had 10 volumes. And each of the 10 books at 10 volumes explain all of the previous history that I can't delineate here. But let me tell you this. You're all invited to the Death Delay Club. Meaning, reading you the Riot Act, I don't want you to go to violence until you have the permission of God to do it. And I'm the God that's going to give you permission to do it. So that's the Riot Act. Stop the violence. Conserve your ammunition. Don't kill your debtors. Don't kill your gang members. Don't kill anybody else. Because if you do, you lose your eternal life because God in heaven's going to witness against you. But you have a chance to start a new family in the future with a new government. And I'm the man that Orson Welles was telling you in 1980 there's going to be a man that would see the future. And I'm living that future because I have to see it myself. And I've already identified myself by several of the events that Nostradamus predicted about myself. That I am that Nostradamus. And I'm not ashamed of it. Because what I got to do has been commanded by God in heaven, and I'm going to do it. And I'm going to have no conscious guilt. That when I create a new government, the old government couldn't be taught because they were old dogs serving their Jewish benefactors, which became nothing but a government of Satan, which they were sold their souls to, and they couldn't kill their Jewish benefactors. Tragedy. The Jewish benefactors would have killed them after they killed the American people in genocide, regardless. So it's like, they're going to die either way. I'm going to kill them, or the Jews are going to kill them. But there's the prophecy of Revelations, but because thou art lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I will spew you out. So, what have I done for America recently? Of course, I told you about the gold machine. But I started a railgun project. Immediately after my travel in 1988, came back to Motor City Sign in Detroit. Since I announced myself to Lee Iacocca February 17, 1986, he was most concerned about my existence. When I got kidnapped, April 2nd, 1987, by the Jewish state of Ohio. There's the state police helicopters, the state police troopers, the Lima City, Allen County police officers, and the Lima City County sheriffs. They dragged me off the I-75, took me into their jail cell, and murdered me. And another friend. The friend got resurrected 8 hours later, but it only took me like 5-10 seconds to be dead. And God said, okay, that's fine, that's enough. You know you're dead. Now you can go back into your body. Because it was after the sheriff said, the second one is dead, that my friend was already dead, and I dropped dead. And then after he declared that the poison that we were both served was killing us, that we were supposed to disappear from the United States consensus of Congress of murderers, that I was resurrected, and I wanted to drink water from that fountain right outside the jail cell. It's right over there, said the sheriff. And then they had a problem 8 hours later saying, what are we going to do? Here's one alive and the other's still dead. Well, I asked Jesus Christ to resurrect him. So that solved their problem. I gave my friend $420 when I entered the jail cell because I didn't need the money. I'm God. He would need the money when he got out of the jail cell. So that was his leaving Lima City, Allen County, Ohio, after all the travesty. I was in there another 3 weeks until after I tormented the sheriff jail cell from discovering and understanding that I was Christ Peter, that they threw me out in the street and said, get the hell out of here. Anyways, during the time though, my friend, when he left, went to Lee Iacocca and told him what happened. Lee Iacocca came down and they killed him in the jail cell. I had to resurrect Lee Iacocca from the dead. So what happened was, here's a limousine from Michigan in Lima City, Allen County, Ohio, and Lee Iacocca is resurrected back into Michigan without needing a limousine transportation back. Afterwards, when I came back in 1988, Lee Iacocca had discovered that there was a certain individual that was one of the three tramps at the John F. Kennedy assassination in Detroit. Of course, the Grassy Knoll assassin was also in the local area. Unknown to me, but I would find out about him later. So I got corralled into Motor City Sign because they stole my car that I had traveled across the United States. Made a false snow emergency. Towed cars off the street that were not removed during the snow emergency. And this is in October, and there wasn't even any snow. And they still towed the car. It was basically armed robbery. They didn't want me to travel around the state of Michigan. In other words, they literally, having come back to Michigan with a car, they stole it. Then they offered me to live in Motor City Sign, and two of the owners of the three tramps had daughters in Chryslers married to executives. And so they moved me into Motor City Sign because the owner was just another assassin of a conspirator of the federal government, having association with Chryslers and Chryslers with association with Lee Iacocca, wanted to put me under observation inside of Motor City Sign. And so I moved in December 4th, 1988, my birthday. The result, of course, was that they were setting it up for another trap of exterminating me, murdering me, of which I had to survive another 200 attempted murders during my time at Motor City Sign. One of the conspiracies was that they gave me a rug to put inside of my room that had blood all over it of another murder, that when I wanted to move out of the residence afterwards, I had to cut up all the rug and throw it in the trash, just that when they were changing the trash containers out in the alley for the last time of pickup, I destroyed the evidence that they wanted to accuse me of committing murder and throwing that entire rug out. So when I asked for another resident to move to that was owned by a Jew, he said, "We want to inspect your residence." So he was expecting to walk into my residence and see a bloody rug, witness the police that there's evidence of a murder, and the rug wasn't there. I didn't own a gun. Couldn't kill anybody. Never had military training to use a knife to kill anybody. But yet they had requested me from the original owner of moving in to put that bloody rug of a murder into the residence to later accuse me of murder. And when the Jews came in and looked around and didn't see the bloody rug, they denied me moving out of the residence. But really, I still left the evidence of the bloody rug in the residence, but it wasn't the way they wanted to find it. So that was one of the first entrapments of saying, if you had a wife, we would have killed her and accused you of murder and thrown you into prison. Well, since I didn't have any woman to be killed as a wife or a girlfriend, they just had me given a bloody rug to do it with. Didn't happen. But during that time, afterwards, I still remained in there under military observation, and I discussed the future of weapons designs for them that I wanted Detroit to create. In that regard, the creation of that weapons wasn't going to be completed for another 3 decades, and I had to go through another 695 attempted murders before I completed the defense of your weapons for your survival. In that regard, I started the nuclear ballistic railgun, missiles using a universal gear that I told them to research as the next generation of missile ballistics, not solid rocket fuel, because this was hypersonics. And they developed those missiles, and they have already deployed those missiles. So the capability from using universal gear as a missile accelerant is now even going into jet engine designs, of which the fuel efficiency is incredible, and they get even faster cruising speeds at hypersonic speeds in fuel efficiency. But that's just another generation saying we can use the missile technology that was developed into a jet engine design development. And I've seen that over YouTube. But I've also seen engineers that are describing technology that for space acceleration is basically nuclear ballistic railgun technology. And it's like I was teaching that 3 decades ago when I saw it. It's like, okay, I may have still been just a student out of Michigan State University, just a short 8 years, and I was already teaching them the future of engineering, that now they're making it a common course education by physics engineers. Of course, in the nuclear ballistic railgun, I had a certain tragedy with the computer that I was writing the story on just recently. And I couldn't deliver the message when I wanted to. But I can deliver it now anyways. That they have the means of creating a barrel to survive an atomic accelerant force, 40,000 feet per second explosive. But told me from Detroit in spirit that, guess what? Your barrel failed. That's not my engineering, and nobody in Michigan is saying that any of the engineering that I developed at Motor City Sign, where they had taken me to be murdered, and there was a bullet hole through the window, and I was angry as hell. I did the walk of the tomb of the unknown soldier, and I told him, I'm going to take away all the engineering of the weapons that I order you to design and develop, and I'm going to take command of those. And it's now known that in the last letter that I did deliver successfully before my computer was disabled, that Article 1, Section 9, 3, 4, and 5, or actually 4, 5, and 6, you can't tax interstate trade and you can't regulate it. So I could create a conglomerate of weaponry capability that not only Donald Trump cannot touch by taxes, he can't regulate by his authority as president because the Constitution denies him from regulating interstate trade, so that all of these defense industries can develop, produce, and trade weapons in the United States, and there's not a damn thing Donald Trump can do about it. And that's what I said to the military in Motor City Sign. I'm going to take the weapons away from you. Because when I become president of the United States, they are in control of nothing. All they control is the attempted kidnapping of the United States, and that entire Pentagon will be fed to the sharks in the Potomac, which is right nearby. They're all the communist military command that served Russia in World War II, and now they're not going to fight Russia in World War III because the communists in the Pentagon are kidnapping the United States as World War III, and that military command is going to lose their last battle against the American people. This is the military command that built the Leavenworth prison to tell all the recruits that you're kidnapped into Leavenworth. You either obey or we'll put you in Leavenworth. Well, the military considers the American people are already their prisoners of war. And the only way you can tell the Pentagon that you're not their prisoners of war is you're going to kill all their goddamn officers. Every goddamn one of them. And you're not going to lose this war against the Pentagon of communists kidnapping the United States. Before I finished my railgun, they tried to kill me 3 straight Aprils. 2023, 2024, and 2025. Nothing but murder. As if the Jewish people can vote by their guns to kill anybody they want. Well, if Donald Trump is eliminating your vote, you know what to do. That the only vote for the government is to kill it. And the next government will accept your votes to represent you, because the previous government you have to kill because they're not representing you. Because if you're not giving a vote for them to represent you, you have to give them a vote of your guns and kill them to say that they're not going to be allowed to represent you. And then the call came from Detroit. Your barrel failed. Houston, we have a problem. Well, here's Apollo 13 to the rescue. Mission control here. We have your problem under observation. I told them how to make a barrel. After I left the Motor City sign, having survived attempted murder after David Koresh was murdered, that they all say for the last 3 decades, we never tried to kill him. You want to believe liars? Jesus in John chapter 8, verse 44 called liars murderers. Well, there they are. They're the murderers that tried to kill God. And they're all lying. And in that regard, they have Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 2 and 3. For that regard, they have to kill God and anybody who worships God. So that if your worship of Jesus Christ in heaven, as I do, well, he's my brother. Of course, I'm going to be consulting him. I'm his blood brother as a son of God. And doing that announcement made me a target for all of my life. That they wanted to kill me for claiming I was a son of God because the Jews wanted to conquer the United States. Yes, the Jewish people, the communists, wanted the Karl Marx Communist Manifesto of England to kidnap the United States and destroy your constitutional right and imprison your constitutional children from their freedom into their communist captivity. And of course, Donald Trump has already completed that statement with his trade tariff taxes that you're all communist prisoners paying 30% taxes to your communist prison guards. Well, I told them, in the spirit anyways, my writing is still there to be delivered later, that all they had to do was take my steel cable fiber armor laser ovens, which I created while I was in the Motor City sign, that they could make a steel under laser power, even greater strength and power than Kelly Johnson's Lockheed Martin Skunk Works of 3,000 degree temperatures. In fact, Lawrence Livermore Laboratories say they could use lasers to make 40,000 degree temperature steels, which is strong enough to be able to survive an atomic accelerant of 40,000 feet per second of metastasized hydrogen metal that's created with the gold from the lead. When they put the liquid hydrogen with the lead, transfer the atomic structure to make lead in the gold and metastasize and liquid hydrogen into metastasized hydrogen metal. When the metastasized hydrogen metal explodes, it explodes 44 times previous known pressures, which was C4 at 10,000 feet per second. That's one of my cigar holders. It's a 3/8 long bolt, cotton in the end, and stick the cigar on the other end with paper napkin sleeve to fill the gaps in the air. Excuse me while I join Jesus Christ in heaven in his imbibing. Anyways, I got around to declaring that they could take their steel cable fiber armor. You know, you may have seen these laser printers that can print out guns, or even laser printers that can create ceramic walls for homes. Well, my laser cable fibers could lay in a metal form. These how should I say it? Steel cable fiber armor laser oven fiber into a form press. You know, as far as for the 22 caliber gun, 7 feet long, and others would be longer as far as, you know, the higher calibers of 30, 50, 20 millimeter, 50 millimeter. In that regard, they would need longer forms and thicker pits when they stamp the metal out like a samurai sword. Now I'm going to take a break here because I got to take a piss, but I'm not going to stop this recording only because of the fact I want it continuous. And in that regard, you'll have to excuse me a moment. But I'll let you know I'm still here, communicating while I relieve myself in my own private urinal. With regard that I have to relieve myself of my personal distress here. And that'll be accomplished in just a very short period of time. Of which I don't have to go very far to do this. And therefore, it's not going to take much time out of the video for me to have to accomplish my distress call. And that being accomplished, we can come back to the session here, of which I don't want to interrupt the video whatsoever, especially the first delivery, which I warn everybody. You know, it says in Ezekiel chapter 3 and chapter 4, warn them of, or Ezekiel, warn them of me. Well, it's not me that you're worried about. It's God in heaven. Because Jesus Christ elected me president, and when they come up to vote to kidnap me, God's going to strike them all dead. And if there's 20,000 dead men outside in my street, well, then you're going to all know about it. That a government of communists tried to kidnap me, and you're going to have a new government because you're going to vote to kill the rest of the government that just had nothing but cowardice in the face of an enemy violating the law. And you're not going to be cowards because I'm going to make you bulletproof. That if I was bulletproof, Uncle Sam wants you. What's the, how you get that there? Uncle Sam wants you. On this, now, yeah. Uncle McCowan wants you to be bulletproof. Anyways, that being accomplished, I've got another holder here already prepared. Oh, I had two of them. Well, we'll find out where the other one went in just a moment. Oh, there it is. Not that it was lost for long. This was another holder. I was walking along the street. It's a cable link. Somebody throwing it into the street. Makes a good cigar holder. I put cotton in the one end for a filter. It's got a plastic holder on the other end that fits the cigars just right. And so I have two of them depending on the cigar diameters that I pull out of the packages. They vary from time to time. Picking up scrap from the street, which I've had to live in 3 straight states. Well, I got another one that perfectly suits my accoutrements for the time. Anyways, if you didn't notice in Revelation chapter 8, the smoke of the temple. Well, go and review your revelations about the smoke of the temple, and you'll understand that you're going to wait. Read you the Riot Act, give the appropriate people the chance to repent. You know, I can sit there and look like Orson Welles as the man who saw tomorrow, and it's like, I'm not that unmerciful, but once there's the moment of no mercy, there's no turning back. My judgment that's already been given by God, that the people that tried to kill me can never be forgiven. You want to save your children, Google, YouTube, Microsoft, AT&T, all the internet services. You want to save your children? You don't want to end this broadcast. Anyways, what it was is that once the samurai sword is stamped by like 1,000 plates of steel, incredibly strong. The fact is that the steel cable fiber is not made with this 3,000 degree temperature steel. It's made with 40,000 degree temperature lasers, which is multiple times stronger than 3,000 degree steel. And when you stamp that together with 1,000 steel cable fiber wires, well, they can take the length of that strap and wound it around the barrel, interlace the edges. Of course, they have to create the congruity that one edge of the metal would be synchronized with the other edge, that once the two edges are rotated over each other, they tap it all together to create a steel barrel that, once brazened under heat, MIG welded, however they design that, and sealed into a complete barrel. Now, the samurai sword could cut through a 50 caliber barrel. And it was mentioned in my reading of history that the samurai sword steel of 1,000 plates could cut right through a 50 caliber barrel. Not mine. This is an atomic ammunition barrel. 40,000 feet per second explosive atomic warhead is not going to bust this samurai sword wrapped around in a barrel, because it's going to be stamped into a configuration and annealed after brazening so strong that the infantry are going to be able to fire shots at 20 miles per second. And they got the optics that they can see 32 miles. So it's not that I created the complete system. There's a lot of other engineering that is also joined into the confluence of events, that you can see 32 miles of an enemy sticking their head over the top of a hill. My gun can blow his head off in a second. And so all my poor people don't have to worry about it. Once you're bulletproof, you can't be struck dead by a nuclear ballistic railgun, because God won't let you die in the service of the Son of God. They tried to shoot me dead time and time again, even before I finished the railgun. But with the railgun completed, the provocation to completing that was because I told Texas that they need to build atomic ammunition. And that's not in violation of the law. I got a problem at the door here. I got to answer this. Excuse me, I'm going to scoot them aside. Oh, shit. The girlfriend of my roommate comes up every once in a while, asks for Juan. Juan doesn't want to see him. But I have to answer the door of everybody that knocks anyways. Anyways, in that regard, when I ordered the atomic ammunition to be designed for the railgun, that gave the question to Michigan, do you have a railgun that can handle the atomic ammunition? They said, well, give us atomic ammunition. They gave them atomic ammunition, and the barrel destroyed itself. Couldn't handle the 40,000 feet per second explosive capability. Well, there's some other constructions of a sleeve that I can't tell you now, but you know, Nostradamus in his prophecy calls it all winding up the sleeve. So there's a sleeve, and then there's something winding up, and it's like the barrel winding up after the sleeve. So they'll get the cognizant understanding of that conception. But the fact is that Detroit, you know, my surveillance telling me everybody calls me full of crap, but I know there's a lot of people that hold me faithful in Michigan, and they asked for the answer, and I gave it to them in the spirit because they know my voice. I was there before. I had spoken to them. People can hear me. in the spirit know my voice. I've spoken to people, and when I speak to them afterwards in the spirit, they know who's speaking to them. So I'm speaking to America so that when you hear me in the spirit, you know my voice. Now, in this regard, they were given the information necessary to make the multiple steel cable fiber armor layers in regard to construction of the barrel, stamp it out like a samurai sword, like 1,000 sheets of steel cable fiber armor. At 40,000 degrees temperature, that's like from 3,000 degrees temperature, ding, 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 12 times more powerful. And then when they stamp it out, the strength increases from there. So that when they tested their atomic ammunition accelerant, the capability was that the barrel could sustain the explosive blast. And that is changing warfare in that we can reach an enemy 20 miles in a second, even less. And I don't really want to say, because when you think about aircraft at 50,000 feet and 20 miles in a second, they haven't got long to live up there. So what happened is the confluence that they got a new barrel design that I had to go through 695 attempted murders, finally give it to them. But when I learned about it, it was like 4 years after Motor City signed, when I proposed the railgun. And when I, on April or March 31st, April 1st, 1997, I got the book of John Hogue, Nostradamus, exactly on the day it was predicted by John Hogue, by Nostradamus, and it's all written in prophecy. It's all written, and I got the receipt to prove that after sunset on March 31st will be 9:59 or 9:58 on the receipt. So that's the Jewish New Day. But it was before the secular day of March 31st at midnight of March 31st. So Nostradamus described it as April, March, that I would discover the day of his own book, identifying myself. And of course, when I read the book and I went through Century 9, chapter 12, and discovered another verse that I had performed in prophecy of the Hermes and Diane by the Lake by artistic glass that I learned in Columbus Art Glass in Tyler, Texas, and developed in Michigan when I returned to my parents' home, that I had actually built on October 25th and 26th the Hermes and Diane by the Lake with many little silver pieces, which was silver glass. So there was one prophecy just a day after 9/11, 2001, that was produced in 1986. And then here, literally 11 years later, I discover the book of Nostradamus on the day that I am predicted to pick it up. Nostradamus actually predicted the very day, the moment in time that I was to receive his own writing, that me, Nostradamus, would receive my own writing, talking to myself. And there he is, giving me his manual of instruction. And all the secrets that I had to hold during that time. And there were a lot of secrets. There's many more because I haven't completed the war, conquer the world, but Jesus Christ has elected me president that no one's going to be able to kill me. So, and I might be the only survivor on the earth if everyone don't give a damn, just because this is just something that I just fabricated. Really, I don't care. But just so that I vindicate myself before Jesus Christ and God the Father in heaven, I at least tried to save your life. In that manner, therefore, they can build atomic ammunition, and it's not illegal. The United States are not members of the United Nations and the Regulatory Agency of Atomic Weaponry, and therefore, even if President Eisenhower was a member of the United Nations and the Regulatory prohibiting of the proliferation of atomic weapons, he still developed atomic weapons. And he had developed the atomic artillery. You could see it on the internet. Firing an atomic artillery in an explosion. The Soviet Union stole the technology from the development, and they built 45,000 of those atomic warheads every year for 20 years. In fact, the Ural Mountains, where they developed the radiation of the atomic warheads, has a river going all the way from the Ural Mountains, into between the Ural Mountains, all the way to the Arctic Ocean. That's completely radiated from their atomic weapons production of 2,000 nuclear artillery shells. And in those 2,000 nuclear artillery shells, or not 2,000, I'm sorry, 2 million, because 45,000 a year, 20 years. Give or take 5 years or so, that's 2 million nuclear artillery shells. They can't use them in the Ukrainian war without inciting nuclear war. But it didn't stop me from creating nuclear ammunition, because their artillery shells are not significant in the regard that they would be civilian killers, and that would initiate nuclear war that would kill their civilians. But my atomic ammunition is target specific. And in target-specific ammunition, this is a more civilized manner of warfare in that we're only killing the belligerents and not the civilians, of which they have a chance to survive. And of course, generals opening and engaging into open nuclear hostilities would be ill-advised to sacrifice their own populations in a counter-response. Especially that their own soldiers are going to be killed and their population is going to be conquered anyways. So I returned back to my Orson Welles presentation, The Man Who Saw Tomorrow. It almost like 45 years ago he introduced me. And I'm living that tomorrow. Now I'm going to be changing my cap out here sometime in the future. I got a new cap to use. I got the long hair of Nostradamus paintings from 2003. That after I was arrested, July 27th, 2017, I never cut my hair again. I just let it grow out. Got my federal benefits for injuries occurred during my lifetime, which gave me a huge baseball bat and a softball in the groin. If you don't know the humor about that, I can't understand what you're thinking about. But in that regard, I've already expressed the laws of United States Title Code 18, Chapter 13, Section 241 through 249, that they can't deny me my relief benefits, which would be a violation of law, or to say it otherwise, the President of the United States is kidnapping the American people. And that's kidnapping your children. The basic reason, even George Washington, he never gave birth to any children, and yet he fought for the children of the United States. And I haven't given birth to any children, and I'm doing the same thing as George Washington. I'm fighting for your children. So I don't, I seen the military parade on September 2nd and September 3rd of the Chinese in Red Square. All the American military technology that China stole, or the Jews delivered to China to build up their military forces. Didn't shake me one little bit. I used to play a game of marbles that my father had. He was a championship marble player of his neighborhood, and he had all the marbles of the neighborhood. I would set up little plastic toy soldiers and roll the marbles and knock them all down. Set the soldiers up and roll the marbles and knock them all down again. Well, God has set up the Chinese, and I got all the marbles to knock down the Chinese. I had to wait another 1,000 years before God sets them all up again, so I knock them all down again. And then he says, well, you won't have to do that again. I'm going to put them all in hell, and game's over with. Oh, what is it for the future anyway? So that in Eisenhower creating his atomic artillery, he didn't give a damn about the atomic regulatory command of the United Nations to continue to build his nuclear artillery systems. And in fact, he even gave England 10,000 atomic warheads, which are the most dangerous aspect. That when Charles Bull built huge motor tubes, that those motor tubes were created to launch Eisenhower's atomic warheads, not against Russia, because the bombs are too big for any planes to carry, but the motor tubes are used in design in England so that they could launch Eisenhower's atomic warheads against Europe. England had already conquered Russia. I'll explain that in the future, which I've done in my letters already. But those atomic warheads were going to be used against Europe, to destroy Europe. And the only thing that's going to defend Europe is my nuclear ballistic railguns, which can shoot down those atomic warheads while they're being launched and destroy them before they explode their European cities. Which I don't recommend Europeans violate the Americans inside of Europe for the delivery of their nuclear ballistic railguns, because it's only going to be the Americans who control those guns to stop those atomic warheads. But here's Eisenhower creating atomic warheads as an endangerment, not only to the Americans, because England can transport thousands of those warheads into Canada and use the Charles Bull artillery systems to launch the nuclear warheads against the United States, of which my nuclear ballistic railgun had to shoot them down and do the same to save Europe. Now, in that regard, here's Eisenhower building atomic warheads, and I would have to build atomic ammunition with nuclear ballistic railguns to shoot down Eisenhower's bombs. So it's not that I'm doing anything illegal, because I'm not regulated by the United Nations, as no state citizen or government is regulated, because we're not members of the United Nations. Only the federal communists of Washington are members of the Atomic Regulatory Agency, and the Atomic Regulatory Agency in Washington, D.C. by Article 1, Section 9, Clauses 3, 4, and 5, or 4, 5, and 6, have no taxation or regulation of trade in the United States of atomic development or production, of which my nuclear ballistic railgun has a right to operate without regulation or control under the freedom of the Bill of Rights, where there can be no infringement on gun systems or weapons, and without the consent of the state governments, who should not be giving consent, of Article 8, Chapter or Clause 17, which the state citizens have a right to build these systems as their own consent of defense, and in performing the atomic ammunition, defend ourselves even against Eisenhower's own weapons. Which I might add, in his military-industrial complex speech, Eisenhower practically apologized to the United States for surrendering their weapons to potential enemies. And when those potential enemies were accepting Eisenhower's weapons, their consent and conspiracy was that they were going to use them not as the United States would desire to use them, but as England would desire to use them against Europe and against the United States. And so, with the laws of the Constitution, I had a complete right, even from Eisenhower building atomic weaponry, that as my authority as a state citizen, to build atomic weaponry of my own authority. And this is the defense for we the people, that Eisenhower had surrendered weaponry to our enemies that could be used against us, that the same authority that I have from Eisenhower is to develop weaponry to defend ourselves against his own stupidity, or, well, his ignorance. And when he finally woke up out of his ignorance before the end of his presidential term, he apologized literally to the American people, that he warned them of the military-industrial complex that is beyond their control. And you know what it means to be beyond their control? Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics are building weapons in England against the United States. In other words, Lockheed Martin and General Dynamics took Americans as prisoners of war to build weapons for our enemies. If you want to call it fascism. King Charles III, the fascist, took American prisoners of war to build weapons for his fascist government, but not really a fascist government. It's called communism. England is just an island of communists. Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto is a Jew rabbi law. Well, they were going to conquer the world. They conquered Russia and murdered 1.5 billion children. So if you don't think I'm not defending your children against a genocide of the rules of war, that when the Jews conquer, they kill their enemy completely and all their children. This is the war that you're facing today in the United States. You don't have to go to any other country in the world. The communists are already here, and you're going to have to kill all their children. Because they're raising their children to make your children their prisoners. So I have a lot more to discuss of my 10 books of 10 volumes. But I could only give you a recital. The only reason I'm still here as the claiming to be the Lord God Almighty is that I'm not holding anybody under extortion or threat to be respected. It's only faith. I had my faith in God and I survived. They claim that I didn't suffer any attempted murder. And guess what? They all lied because they are attempted murderers. And you want to know why I'm not your president already? Because they want you to surrender to them as Jews. Surrender. Jesus said at his time in Jerusalem, the truth will set you free from who? The Jewish rabbi. So when I'm presenting you the truth, who are the Jewish rabbi as communist government in America that attempted to murder me 45 years? And I have to go back even earlier than that. And the reality is, in the book of Zechariah, that they would do a slow death of my life. And so I'm the walking dead. Here, I'll present to you this. I practiced it earlier. You see that hand? It's disjointed. I couldn't pull it back. I couldn't pull it back. I tripped and fell one day, and I couldn't pull it back. The reason why, because I'm wrapped in a piano wire. They claimed I had TB in 1967. They identified me as to be the future Christ, and they're going to kill me. So this hand is disjointed because there's a piano wire going up through the hand, wrapped around my fingers and up and down the arm. When I fell, the band up and down my arm created a massive bruise being jerked out of position. The massive bruise was interior bleeding, and I took pictures of that at the time of the event. But what they did when they took me into the hospital in 1967, claiming I had TB so they could put me into the hospital, they were going to surgically wrap me in this band so that I would strangle to death. But God would not allow me to die, so I'm the walking dead. Literally, my second seal vision was the pale horse rider of death, which I showed pictures of. That in the pale horse rider of death, I was the one that was supposedly wrapped in death by the bands of Zechariah chapter 11. And those bands are still on my body and they can't be removed. And the only person that I'm going to have remove those bands is Jesus Christ in heaven. Only because if I tried to have those bands removed by surgeons on the earth, they could fuck up my neural system and paralyze me up and down my body, and I'm not going to allow that to happen. They can discover the bands. Yes, they're going to. But I'm not going to have them remove them because only Jesus Christ can get those removed. The prophecy of God created them, and the Jews performed that prophecy. Only He's going to remove them and restore my body. Then I'll be like about 6'4" and towering Hulk at almost 200 pounds. And I look forward to that. Because if I die, I'm going to be in heaven anyways, and if heaven doesn't want to see me, because He made me the throne of God on the earth, then, and that's why my survival is that God in heaven, in that regard, says, we don't need you in heaven, you're there on the earth. And there's nothing I can do about that. And of course, the Jewish people regret the day that they tried to kill me, because I'm not going to forgive them for it. They will all want to celebrate my death. They would mock me if I forgave them, because why? Oh, he wants to think he's God forgiving us. Well, there's like 24 prophecies. I kill them all to prove I'm God. So that's not going to be very difficult to do when the American people want to save their children from being kidnapped and destroyed, from being free under the kingdom of God. And I'm not here to call anybody a sinner. So do what you will. Don't violate the blood of your neighbor. But you got a lot of communists to kill in the United States, and they're not going to be bulletproof. Because the Jewish blood cannot receive the Spirit of God to be bulletproof. So you just shoot them all dead. You'll have a new government. I'll have a new military command. And the people, you can't teach old dogs new tricks when they've all sold their souls to Satan anyways. And they're saying, you can't build nuclear weapons. You can't build atomic ammunition. Well, Eisenhower did it, and I'm going to do it. And the American people are going to defend themselves. And their children are not going to be kidnapped. Not like Donald Trump kidnapped your children and took 30% of the wealth out of your pocket, that you couldn't spend 30% of your wealth on your children because Donald Trump said the slave masters are taking your children. And there's Donald Trump the kidnapper, as if he didn't kidnap previously. And I got all the stories of Donald Trump kidnapping Americans previously. And everybody's trying to alert the American people that, well, Donald Trump is kidnapping the United States, 100% of the United States for 30% of their wealth. And a lot of analysts said the big, beautiful bill was the greatest wealth transfer in history. 30% of the American wealth being transferred to the Jewish government is the greatest treason ever committed by a president in the history of the United States. And I've already told the stories of how Donald Trump helped England steal $32 trillion from the American people, even before he was president. So I've enjoyed this little chat system here. And not that I'm not going to forget what I said, but I have to embellish it later. Maybe adding in some photographs. I got to find out how large this video is for transmission for Yahoo. Now, since I got a gold machine and no one's paying me for it anyway, I really don't care. I'll get that money later in the victory, but I need the victory of you saving your children from being kidnapped. So nobody needs to donate, nobody needs to deliver any money, no one needs to do anything for my financial benefit. I'm well taken care of. I found a $15,000 diamond that I've been hanging on to since Michigan. And that's a survival in itself. I showed it to jewelers and they said, oh, it's just an hammerstone worth $25. Yeah, you're going to tell me I'm going to surrender a $15,000 yellow diamond. More than a full carat yellow diamond to you saying it's just a amber stone. You know, there was a prophecy in the Star magazine that I had discovered in writings of the 1998-2000, the explosion of the Yellowstone. And, you know, just happens to be that Yellowstone National Park was supposedly a massive ancient volcano. But this wasn't talking about that. The explosion was the one who had the yellow diamond as the yellow stone. And so you have your explosion in hand. And then I'm reading you the Riot Act again. You don't cut off these transmissions. You don't deny the American people the freedom of speech. their freedom of press, their freedom of association, their freedom of assembly, their right to own and bear arms, their right to trade and bear military weaponry in state exchange, which cannot be regulated by the laws that I explained, cannot be taxed. You are defending your nation against a criminal conspiracy of communists of the United Nations as the Empire of England, thinking they can kidnap the United States by hiring, with their Jewish billionaires, an army of England from Brexit, Brexit, taken out of Europe, transferred into the United States for the purpose of armed overthrow of the American people, calling the British Army the federal government, as hired agents to invade your states and kidnap your nation. You know better now, and they have nothing to hide other than hiding from themselves. In that regard, my final warning is that the bondage sex prisons of the Supreme Court as freedom of speech was that the British Army in 2022 kidnapped 395,000 Americans missing, reported by CBS News in 2023. That when a girl was kidnapped from a national park in upstate New York, that they included in their report that 395,000 Americans were kidnapped and missing in 2022. That this is a foreign invasion, an undeclared war, kidnapping the United States. Google's children can be kidnapped. Yahoo's children, YouTube's children can be kidnapped. AT&T's children can be kidnapped. Microsoft's children can be kidnapped. Because when they kidnap the nation, you're all prisoners of war. And so when I read the Riot Act, I'm telling the American citizens, I need another 9 months for my weapons production to upgrade their tooling for their production and their capability to defend you from being taken prisoners of war and to defend your freedom. And in that regard, this is a serious message. And if I had to be Franklin Delano Roosevelt, fireside chat. This is the first of the one of them. But I've also invited the state legislatures and the governors to save their life, because otherwise they're all going to die. They're in this no man's land between selling their souls to the Jews and the American people that don't want to be kidnapped by a government that they can't vote for. And if they can't vote for the government, they're going to shoot to kill the government and destroy the kidnappers afterwards. So that's Article 5 of We the People in the Constitution. And you can have a constitutional convention of your election of a Lord God Almighty, and Jesus Christ voted me to be president October 18th, 4:35 outside of Magnolia post office box in St. Petersburg, Florida. And 2005 to be your president of the United States, and I had to survive attempted murder for the last 20 years by the defense of Jesus Christ so that I could perform that for you. to be your president. And believe me, I'm not going to the White House. I'm going to destroy that building. I get to build another home for myself, and it's not going to be there. Anyways, very good. You have a good day. This September 18th, 2025. Let's see, it's just past 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you very much, and you have a nice day. I'll be on this YouTube channel again in the future. Stay tuned for the Lord God Almighty. Christ St. Peter, Gregory Allen McCowan.